Hey everyone, it's your favorite legal beagles,
Hi.
and back for a podcast that is relevant to the month we're in. This is March, and it's National Brain Injury Awareness Month. Yes, that's a thing. It's sponsored by the Brain Injury Association of America. And it's something that we see often in our practice with clients that are suffering from a concussion or something more serious. Traumatic brain injury. Some people wonder if there's something different from a concussion or a traumatic brain injury. Sounds scary, but they're really one and the same. It's part of a spectrum. Concussion is a traumatic brain injury. It's just a milder form, kind of more functional in its impact rather than structural. But nevertheless, there's something that arises from your brain inside this great skull of yours that gets sloshed around in an accident. And, that whipping back and forth inside there like jello is a closed head injury, really, right? There's no visible blood on the outside or anything, but nevertheless, it causes some debilitating symptoms.
Certainly, yes. And we see it a lot in our practice with when there's airbag deployment, when there's, side impact collisions, and maybe it's a whipping this way and hit the head on the window, or a quick whipping from behind, or just when they're spinning in the car,
Yeah.
sometimes like with spinning on ice, or barrels, those kinds of things. And so yeah, we see it a lot, and it can happen, of course, to the occupants as well, passengers. And so when we have families maybe that are, they have little infants up all the way up to dad, and how the closed head injury surfaces and how it presents itself is going to be different for each person, each occupant in the car, depending on their age and what they do in life.
Yeah. I mean, some of those symptoms that people experience can be anything from just simply a headache and some pressure in the head, maybe behind the eyes sometimes, to things like nausea. Oh gosh, I felt nauseous after the accident, or maybe later that day or the next day, right?
Mhm.
And it's something that the ER physician may say, hey, watch out for these kinds of symptoms. And they may take a CT scan at the hospital and see nothing there that is structurally significant, but they may nevertheless say, well, you've been through something that looks like a concussion potentially. So watch for these kinds of things and maybe even give you some anti-nausea medication if you're feeling queasy like that. But as the days go by, you may have problems with your balance or dizziness.
Mhm.
Maybe you have brain fog, your concentration, it really isn't there, and you have a lot of confusion,
Mhm.
You
Or
might be,
fatigue, you
yeah,
might be feeling tired, and you might be feeling that the world is overwhelming. The world is too much. It's too loud. It's too bright. It's too much, and that's making you tired. When it's really your brain is hurt and it needs to rest, and so when all this that's coming into it through the eyes and the ears and everything is putting more pressure on it. So these kinds of things might feel like overwhelm. You might feel really tired. The lights might be too bright. The music might be too loud. You become intolerant, and then your family members might be going, "Gosh, what's wrong?
well, that's an important,
Oh,
yeah.
you don't like me anymore."
Sometimes coworkers or family members, people who are close with you, start to recognize changes in your behavior. Because yeah, heightened sensitivity and that confusion actually leads to a lot of irritation, right? And so people get snappy or they're irritable. And others recognize that before you do yourself. Um, what about small children too, who
Yeah.
sometimes can't even verbalize,
Okay.
for you what they're experiencing?
Yeah.
What kinds of things do you see there?
An infant, a whole family actually, but by a little girl, and she would pull her hair, she would hit her head,
Yeah.
and she would nuzzle into her mom, or in her care provider. And so those were because there's not really a baseline, to well, they used to do this. I mean, she's only 4 months old, right? So what do we baseline
Yeah.
it with? And so you're trying to look for you know what signs that they're giving you, and she had a big brother. He was what, 6 or 7-ish. Um and younger people, they don't want to be a stress on the grown-ups and on the world. They don't want anyone to get in trouble. And so you're looking more for performance at school, whether they're becoming withdrawn, whether their performance in sports, or even if they want to perform in the sports anymore.
Sometimes their sleep habits,
That
really
too.
change. They wake up with nightmares or they're
Yeah,
also having difficulty falling asleep. That
that
happens with
too.
adults as well as kids. These are
Mhm.
these are things that
Right. And you really got to
everyone.
keep an eye out for it, because kids don't want to be a burden on anyone. They don't want to make problems for anyone. And so it's just observation, and making it a safe environment so they can talk. And then taking them to the doctor to report these things. Oh, they're having difficulty sleeping. Their performance at school, or the students are, pardon me, the teachers are saying that they're staring off, or they're not, paying attention.
So sometimes, it's important that if you have a pediatrician for the kids or you have your own primary care physician, that you follow up after your ER visit, and report some of these difficulties you're having so that they're documented and that they can refer you to specialists who are trained to be able to diagnose,
Hmm.
what's going on from
Definitely.
these symptoms. So sometimes a primary care physician might then refer you to a neurologist, or a neuropsychologist. That doesn't mean you're crazy. That just simply means these are people trained to be able to administer certain tests that they can recognize these subtle and sometimes insidious changes that have occurred since the accidents that would indicate, maybe a more serious traumatic brain injury that requires some rest and healing for the brain. One of the common, tests they perform is something called a Glasgow Coma Scale, right? This is a three-part test. It tests your vision as well as your motor skills and your verbal skills because all of these can be subtly affected, right, by this closed head injury, and they'll surface in a scaled performance on a test. And that can kind of put you in a category of how serious is this on the scale, right? And then you could take appropriate treatment. But it's important to get that kind of medical attention
Certainly. Yeah.
eventually on it. And, it's not readily apparent.
No, it's not. And the thing is that if you're experiencing these, or if you're observing it in a loved one who's been in a crash, or has had that kind of experience, um, it's important to have that reporting of the symptoms, or recording of the symptoms, um, because when it comes time to like talk with the insurance companies, and you haven't gone to the doctor and you look good on the outside, then they're going to be like, well, you look good on the outside, but you didn't go to the doctor, you're not hurt. And you want to be well, and you want to be good. And so sometimes people won't report things because they're like, well, I'm doing okay. Nah, if you're feeling this kind of stuff, go report it. Get the help that you need.
Well, that's a good point when it comes to, personal injury claims. That's why it's important to talk to a lawyer, if you're feeling off and you've had experienced a wreck that has really whipped you around in there, or you've hit your head, and you're kind of concerned what's going on. Well, you have a right to be concerned, right? And to look into that. So it's not a rush to the insurance company. What are some of the tactics they do to try to
Oh, well, they'll try to, well, you didn't go to the doctor. You didn't report any bumps or bruises. You seem fine to me. And then you're like, oh God, you're doing fine at work. You went right back to work. You didn't miss any time from work. So it couldn't be, that bad. So they'll try to, give you quick money to get you out of the way.
Well,
So
just don't be too hasty to just assume that everything's fine. You have a little time to make sure that you're okay. And like you say, some of these develop over time, and there's a repeated pattern that becomes apparent. So
and you start
it's
to notice it over time, or your loved ones do. It's not I mean, immediately after a wreck, I mean, stuff is happening, and you may be in shock. And so it takes a little bit of time to observe, really, that these symptoms have surfaced.
But that's why we're here, right? Give us a call if you have concerns that you're just off and you don't think that you need to rush to judgment on things and you need a little help interpreting what you're going through. We can help.
Yeah,
We're on your side
at your side every
every
step of
step of
the
the way.
way.